Let's bring in Rachel Baxendale, Victorian political reporter with the Australian newspaper. Good to talk to you, Rachel. You must be pleased the campaign's nearly over, but according to the polls, no matter which one you look at, Daniel Andrews is going to come out of it on Saturday night with a bloody nose at least.
I think he will lose seats. It's a matter of how many, but he has a lot to lose, I think, is also the point to make. So yes, we do have a number of polls certainly pointing to the possibility of a minority government, which would see him lose, he needs to lose notionally 12 seats. He's got an 11-seat majority, but the redistribution handed him an extra one. So yes, polls getting more and more interesting and certainly tightening as we head into Saturday.
Yeah, and it looks like he could lose seats not only to the Liberals but to Greens as well, which obviously increases the chance that he gets that minority government if he does have heavy losses. Tell us about the big issues of this campaign, the big policy contest, and a lot of that has been around this suburban rail loop that Daniel Andrews is promising and that the Liberals say they won't build. They'll focus that money on the health instead. Here's Daniel Andrews yesterday, a press conference, I'm certain you were there as well, where he was just ducking questions about the cost of this project.
What is the estimate for the second stage of the suburban rail loop? But don't Victorians have a right to know how much those first two stages are estimated to cost?
Well, hang on a second. You're talking about the first two stages. 35 won't be open till 2035 because it's a big project. And again, that will be a matter for future governments.
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult question to answer, what the costs are going to be so many years down the track. But I suppose that's the worry, isn't it, Rachel?
It is, and I suppose the other thing is, even if we just look at this first stage of the suburban rail loop, which they are saying is going to cost $35 billion, that's just the Cheltenham to Box Hill bit. That's the bit the Libs have said they're going to shelve and spend the money on health instead. The government has said that the Victorian taxpayers would pay for about a third of that. They're expecting the feds to front up with another third, and they're saying another third is going to come from the private sector. But at the moment, Anthony Albanese has committed $2.2 billion to the airport part of that, but not this first Cheltenham to Box Hill section. And there's really little detail on, and that's a third of the project cost is more like 11 or 12 billion, not 2.2. So there's a black hole in terms of where that federal money is going to come from and whether that federal money will come. We could have a change of government in Canberra, and that could present problems. And there are also significant questions about exactly how the public-private partnership side of it works. But I guess today's been a story of black holes and dodgy accounting tricks on both sides of the ledger today. Both parties have put out their costings. Just in the last hour, I've been at David Davis, the Shadow Treasurer's press conference. He was actually unable to tell us exactly what the coalition's what the sum is that the coalition's election promises add up to. The coalition is promising to deliver, to slice $10.4 billion off Victoria's net debt in 2025-2026, bringing that total back from about $165 billion to about $155 billion. But 10.2 of that $10.4 billion is going to come from raiding Victoria's future fund rather than other savings that the Libs might have thought about making, which is interesting. And David Davis was unable to say as well, he's talked about the interest that would be saved by using that money to pay off the debt, but he was unable to say what it would cost in terms of the revenue that would otherwise be earned from the investment that money is currently tied up in. So
exactly, there's a fair chance those two figures would cancel each other out. To journalists in the room that the Libs haven't done.
Indeed, and it appeared really that the Libs hadn't done their homework and that there were quite a few dodgy accounting tricks, and really the state budget, whoever wins on Saturday, the state budget's going to be in a bit of a mess, I think.
Well, it isn't a mess, and that's the trouble, I think. It's what I fear about politics these days. We've seen governments, various levels, state and federal, and both sides of politics just spend so much and rack up so much debt over the last few years that people glaze over. They just figure you can keep borrowing, and there'll be a reckoning one day. I don't know when that'll be, though. Just on another aspect of the campaign, and that is the tone of it. While Daniel Andrews and Matthew Guy were very pleasant to each other in the Sky News People Forum, the barbs throughout the campaign have been pretty ugly. Daniel Andrews accusing the coalition of legitimising Nazis effectively, and Matthew Guy had a hit back at that today. Have a look.
If someone's telling lies about us, what is it today? It's Medi-Scare on steroids, whether it's fracking, whether it's Nazis, whatever it might be. This is the Premier of the state. We need a positive vision. And what I'm saying to Victorians is, Saturday you've got the chance to have it.
Is there an underlying tone of nastiness in this campaign, Rachel?
Absolutely there is. And, you know, we've seen Daniel Andrews running scare campaigns on a number of issues. You mentioned this Nazis thing. He's been fairly mischievously accusing the coalition of wanting to overturn the enshrined rule in the state constitution and reintroduce fracking, which is just not going to happen. And this issue of Nazis in the state seat of Narre Warren South, we've seen an interesting situation where there is this fairly awful character who has made quite a few pretty awful comments about Jewish people and is best described as a neo-Nazi who is running in that seat. The Labor and the Liberals have both preferenced him fifth. And Daniel Andrews seems to be using that as an excuse to accuse the coalition of cuddling up to Nazis, even though Labor have preferenced him in exactly the same spot. The point he makes when he's asked about that is that Labor's preferenced the Liberals higher than this guy, whereas the Liberals have put him last. But I think the point I'd make in defence of the coalition is that fifth place in the lower house is an unwinnable position. So it's all a bit academic, really, and a pretty awful scare campaign to use that word, Nazis. So I think if the coalition was preferencing these people in winnable positions, he might have an argument, but the reality is they're not.
Trouble is having this sort of compulsory preference situation. Have voluntary preferencing, and then you don't have to preference any of these unsavoury candidates at all. Thanks for joining us, Rachel. It's been a busy campaign. We look forward to your analysis in The Australian over the next couple of days.
Thanks, Chris.